and welcome to the Around the Table podcast with Pastors Matt Smith and Nick Decker.
This podcast is all about the ministry and preaching of Lebanon Baptist Church in Greensboro, North Carolina. The goal is to help you grow in your faith and spiritual walk with the Lord every single day of your life.
To learn more about Lebanon Baptist Church, visit lbcnow.org. And now your hosts, Matt Smith and Nick Decker.
Hey everybody, Pastor Nick here at Around the Table. Thank you so much for joining us. I am the pastor of Family and Outreach, and I'm joined with our lead pastor,
Matt Smith. We got a real good show today.
real good show.
I've been wanting to say that for a while because I watch another podcast and these guys always say that. They say we got a real good show. So that was I did it once.
You did it once. Let's see if it gets better next week. Real good show. We got a real good show.
Yeah, and as always, you know, we do these Around the Table podcasts for the purpose of, the goal of these really is to help you grow in your faith and walk with the Lord every single day of the week. That's why we do it.
That's right. And it's not just on Sunday morning that you can hear this. This is why we provide it throughout the week. Hey, last week was an excellent episode. If you have not gotten a chance to listen to that, I've heard so many good things, probably because I wasn't on the podcast.
I'm sure that was it.
That's most of the reason. So usually the viewership and hearership goes down. I don't know. But Pastor Matt interviewed Gretchen Cross, who has been a member here for a couple years, but has also been involved for several years about just some disappointment in her life throughout Christmas. And so it's even, applicable to your life, not just around Christmas time. So let me encourage you to listen to that if you haven't. We'll link it in the show notes so you can go back and listen to it. It's about 43 minutes long, I believe, or 38 minutes, something like that. A little longer than what we usually like, or usually do, but I think it's worth it. Hey, next week we have Sean Trollinger, is our interim student pastor at this time, doing an excellent job. He's been on staff now for a couple months, started as an intern, and so we're going to interview him, get to know him a little better, also allow you as the listener and watcher to get to know him better as well. Look at his life and ministry here at Lebanon and maybe some future plans he has with the youth ministry. I think he has some great things coming up and wants to share that. Upward basketball and cheerleading starts next week. Next week.
Wow.
I know. I can't even believe it's that close. But we're going forward. We have, last I checked, we have over 250 players in the league.
Wow.
So we're excited about that, looking forward to that. So be in prayer about that. We also have a couple other things coming up. I know Pastor Matt may have some stuff to say, but on January 24th, I want to just give a little plug here for a few things coming up. On January 24th, we have what we call our Vision Sunday for 2021. It's a Sunday night at 6 p.m. We're going to come together here in the worship center at the church. We're also going to live stream it, and Pastor Matt and I are going to share our vision, our desires, our goals for 2021. And so it's going to be a big Sunday night. Take about an hour. We're going to sit there and just share with you about what we think and what we believe God is leading us to do in 2021. So January 24th at 6 p.m.
Goal number 1. Be better than 2020. Okay.
It's not going to be hard.
hoping to have a better year than 2020.
Yes. I heard a pastor say today, I think I saw it on Twitter, he said, hey, pastors, it's probably not good to share your vision for 2021 this upcoming Sunday because that's probably what happened last year and that vision fell apart. So we're going to wait a couple weeks to share what we think our goals are for 2021 as a church, and we want to get you excited about that. So plan for January 24th. We're also going to do and announce that night our Pray for a Player. We did this last year for Upward. We have around, last I checked, 60% of the players involved in our league, both cheerleaders and basketball players, are unchurched. In other words, they didn't tell us that they went to church anywhere. So we're assuming they're unchurched. And so a large outreach opportunity there. And what we do every year is we ask our church members to adopt a player. And what you do for the whole season is pray for that player. You invest a little time, a little money, $5, $10 in a gift card, something like that. You're sending an email, you're sending a text to the parents, just let them know you're praying for them. And then we have an Upward Sunday. This year, Upward Sunday's in March. So we ask those people that adopt the player to invite them to church. And so it's a great outreach opportunity. And we only kind of focus on those without a church. And so be looking for that. Also, we'll announce that on January 24th. Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, I mean, I'm just excited about Upward this season. I know it's challenging. A lot of hard work has gone into that, but we'll be talking more about that as we get a little closer. But I'm really excited about that and the opportunity. And last year, last year we saw really good fruit and results, good responses from the Pray for a Player and those in our church being intentional about seeking out the one or two or three players that they were praying for and their families and connecting with them. We heard a lot of great feedback from that. I'll never forget one of the ladies who had two boys on my team, and she came up to me one day and said, who is so-and-so? And she mentioned a lady in our church, and I said, well, this is a lady who goes to our church. She said she emailed me just to tell me she was praying for me. And she said, that was so meaningful. And then she came to church. She invited her to church. The lady came, brought her kids to church. First time, she said, the lady in our church said, I'll meet you, same age, said, I'll meet you at the door. Met her at the door, sat with her. And it was just that one story alone, and we could tell many like that, yeah. But that one alone was just a great example of what can be done through personal invitations, prayer, love, and just being there. Yeah,
and we'll share some more stories like that over the coming weeks to get our people excited about that. So be looking for that. That's a great story. Hey, we won't spend any more time on promotional matters because we want to jump into the sermon from this past Sunday. And if you didn't listen to it yet, we'll link the sermon there so you can watch that or listen to it. But you started a series called Habits, or Habit.
Habits.
Plural. Habits, plural, not just one habit. I'm interested in knowing, before we jump into this series, maybe spend some time telling us the backstory about it. So answer, why are you doing habits? Where did it come from? And what it is about.
All right, so we're calling the series Habits, and we're going to look at 6 habits, okay? We're going to focus on spiritual habits, and I'm using the word habits as an acronym to outline these spiritual, regular, everyday kind of spiritual practices that will change your life. And so we talked about the H. We talked about the first one this past Sunday, and we kind of kicked off the series at the end of this year, which is different, but we know everything's not going to magically be better. First Sunday of 2021. It's not like 2020 and all that's totally over. So just kind of in recognition of that, we started this series at the end of 2020. And so we'll carry it into next year. It'll be 6 weeks. And the acronym habits. And so we'll go through that. I'm not going to give the meaning of each point yet. You'll have to come. You have to come to the series.
Or watch online.
Or
watch it later.
Yep.
But he's not going to give it away here.
Or just, watch these around the tables and get the 2-minute recaps.
There you go. Your kid do that. But don't do that.
No. But we're going to go through that. But really the idea for it, I'm sure it was not my own. I've had this kind of tucked away in a file for several years now. It was in one of these files, kind of old, and I'm kind of reviewing back through stuff. When I come across things and I think, oh man, that's really helpful to me, or it may be helpful to others, I write stuff down. I throw it in a file. I know I'm young, I'm real young, 35-year-old, but I'm old in that way that I keep hard copies of things. So I just kind of
I didn't even know those existed.
Yeah, it was like a file, like a folder.
Like a folder.
Yeah, so I pulled out a folder, actually out of a desk drawer. My desk has drawers. Yours does.
No, I don't believe in drawers. I don't need them.
Yeah, so I pulled out the file and was just looking through some of the stuff, and I just felt like coming to the end of this year, I'm thinking about 2020. I'm thinking about bad habits, and I'm like, I really want 2021 to be better. Next year, I want to be better next year, and so. All right, so I just kind of came across this. I'm sure it wasn't my idea. I probably came across it somewhere a few years ago and filed it away and said, hey, I'm going to work on that series and kind of develop that. So that's where it came from.
I think it's very timely. I was wrote this down. I was listening to Craig Rochelle, who's a pastor at Life Church on the West Coast, or out there in the west part of the United States, and he was saying how COVID has intensified whatever habits you have created. So in other words, if you've created bad habits, all right, COVID has literally just intensified those bad habits. So they've just sped them up. But if you created good habits, it's probably likely that those have intensified as well in a good way. And so I think it's very timely to talk about habits during this time. Sadly, though, many of us, and maybe I'm making a faulty generalization here, but I know from my own life, we have developed bad habits during this time, and we have already had bad habits that have just intensified during this time as well. And you mentioned a couple of those. You said, for instance, you said, hey, some people, I think you posted a Facebook post, and you asked people, what habits have you created? Some people said, hey, I just stopped going to church. I stopped listening. I stopped going to church. In fact, I just read a statistic the other day that they said 1 out of 5 Christians today, 1 out of 5 are going to church. It used to be 4 out of 5. Now it's 1 out of 5. Okay, and that includes both live stream and going in person. So stop going to church. And then some said, hey, I don't even pay attention during your live stream. Like, I have it on, but I'm not really paying attention. Eating unhealthy food, not exercising, things like that. I'm interested to hear, and maybe our listeners and watchers are too, viewers are too, what are some bad habits you yourself, Pastor Matt, have formed during this time of COVID?
Yeah, I don't have any bad habits.
No bad habits.
Next question. No.
Skip over everything else.
Yeah, let's see. Allison, my
wife has formed a bad habit.
My wife, let me share hers. No, if she was here, she could tell you my bad habits. But
our wives are here. We should have just had them on. They would have been glad to tell you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think for me, no doubt, one of the bad habits, I'll give you a few. One of the bad habits, though, that I have formed this year is just overconsumption of social media. I don't know, for whatever reason, there's been some gaps, and this is part of what I talked about in the message that we deal with, but there have been some gaps in our life that have been created because of limitations that 2020 has imposed on us. We can't go and do, and so what do we fill that extra space with? And I think for me, a little too much Twitter and Facebook. I've added into my daily routine that, and so I know just, 2 weeks ago, I was just feeling like, oh man, I got off Twitter and I was just so like frustrated. And so I said, that's it. I deleted the Twitter app and made a pact. I'm not getting on Twitter anymore until 2021. So, and then I got to just manage that better. But I felt a lot better.
Did you get back on Twitter?
I haven't yet. No.
Okay, that's
I
impressive.
have actually gone about 2 weeks without being on Twitter, but that there was just frustration. I mean, you
become cynical.
Yeah, a little more cynical.
Yep.
I mean, get up. You probably saw that. Get up, walk around, and take 30 minutes of your day just blowing steam after getting off Twitter and reading some stuff. But that's been a bad habit, I think. And then too, kind of picked up the habit of watching a little too much Netflix. At night.
Are you watching anything good?
No.
Just wasting your time.
Nothing is good. Like I'm watching this show right now about these people in Australia who are like gold, like they're hunting for gold. They're gold rushers in Australia.
I didn't even know those existed.
Yeah, and it's not even entertaining. It's boring. It's crazy.
You got nothing else to do though.
No, I mean you just kind of watch that and kind of wind down from what and so anyway I've just kind of started creating a little bit of all right, I won't watch anything until I've read a book or something. Like I've got several books. I love to read, and there's never a point where I feel like I'm reading enough, and so yet I struggle some with that. So I'm going to read for 30 minutes or whatever before I watch anything on Netflix. At the end of the day. So. Trying to do some of that, get rid of some of those bad habits, cynicism, and just being skeptical of everything. Others talked about that on the Facebook post, but that's been a bad habit too. I think I've developed this year is, just being skeptical of everything, and that's not good for our attitudes and our heart. I read an article today by another pastor, and he was communicating hope and everything, and I read the article. I felt so much better getting a message of positivity about the future. And I read something last week by a pastor who really more of a researcher, Ed Stetzer, and he hasn't been the most positive about COVID and the world we're living in and the changes. But he's starting now to project when things will come back to normal somewhat this year, and that's starting to become encouraging to hear some of that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So maybe I'm rambling there.
Yeah, but you get so caught up in those things and you waste so much of your time, and it does create a bad habit. For me, I rediscovered Krispy Kreme. So on the exercise part, and they have this donut called like the birthday cake donut. And so if you're like a lot of sweets, you got to try this out. So I have eaten too many of those this year.
Man, that sounds good.
It is very good. Next time we'll share some with Sean.
Yeah, my wife keeps my eating habits on pace.
Yeah,
except for during the day when she's not around.
When she's not around, and you got a $20 bill.
And she won't be listening to this anyway because she gets tired of hearing me.
Hey, why don't you go ahead and man, I totally
recap. You want me to recap?
That's it. Recap.
Yeah.
Go ahead and recap the sermon. So we started a series on habits, but you started the first habit this Sunday. Why don't you go ahead and recap the first habit that you talked about, or the whole sermon as a whole, maybe in a couple minutes here.
All right, we know how good I am with time, so let me start with recapping Sunday's sermon. So we're talking about these habits, spiritual habits, really regular practices that will change your life. The first habit stands for the letter H, and I know I run the risk of sounding overly simplistic or irreverent or just shallow with this, but I just call it hang time with God. It's just to make the acronym work. Okay, so we're starting with the first letter in habits, H, and it just stands for hang time with God. Hang time with God. You know, you wind up becoming a lot like the people you hang with and you hang around. I mean, the people you hang out with the most, you begin to resemble each other in many ways, the way you think and all of that. And so if we spend time with God, if we hang out with God more regularly, we'll become more like Jesus. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do, to make that a regular practice that you're hanging out with God. Because I said Sunday that, you know, our lives are not really, I don't believe our lives are the product. They're not really the product of a few good decisions or bad decisions. Our lives, I mean, those things have implications, and a few good decisions, a few bad decisions can help or hurt us in life. But our lives are more the product of our habits. Yeah. And so I wanted to encourage everybody Sunday to make spending time alone with God a habit, a regular daily practice. 10 minutes a day, alone in silence and solitude, with the TV off, the radio off, the kids in bed or not up yet, or something like that. The phone put away where it's not at. You can't hear it if it vibrates, or be distracted by that. 10 minutes a day, reading from the scriptures or reading from a devotional book, and then and praying and just talking to God. And I think that will change our lives more than anything else. And so we talked about the habit of hang time with God.
And then you gave two options, right? How did those fit in? And then what were those two options?
Yeah, so I think we have the choice to live life one of two ways.
Okay.
Option A is busy, noisy, nonstop. Okay, so we can choose to live a nonstop, busy, noisy life. And if we do that, we'll experience frustration. That's what we're going to get. We're going to be frustrated. So I said Sunday, and I'll remind our listeners of this, that if you're frustrated all the time, ask yourself, am I ever stopping during the day? Am I daily stopping, pausing, and spending time with God? Or is it just busy, noisy, nonstop all the time? Because that's going to make us frustrated.
Yeah.
You know, with COVID, you know, again, we maybe haven't been as busy, some of us. Some have not been as busy going, but they just filled it with noise, outside noise from the media and all of that. So don't live that way. Instead, choose to daily withdraw from all the noise. And I would say begin your day that way, if at all possible. Make that the first thing you do in the day is read some scripture or read a devotional book and spend time with God, 10 minutes. And if we do that, we'll experience satisfaction, peace, faith. We'll be more calmer in the midst of life as opposed to just being frustrated all the time. So,
I'm interested to see maybe how you personally, and I think our listeners and viewers would be encouraged to see, how do you personally, and I know we got just a couple minutes here, but how do you personally spend time with God alone? So you said 10 minutes a day, change your life. What do you personally do in your own life to make sure that you spend time with God, and then maybe tell us what you exactly do?
Yeah, so, I mean, for one, and you know this as well, and you've said this before too, but for us, when we're, as pastors, preaching and teaching the Scriptures, we want to make sure that the Scripture speaks to us personally. I mean, the best messages are the ones that have spoken to us and God has used in our lives personally first. And so as I'm studying, the benefit of being a pastor is as I'm studying weekly to preach and teach and all that, I want to make sure that I'm not just in the Word to prepare something to give to others. I want it to speak to me. So I am kind of forced to do that. Now, a lot of guys they won't do it that way. They'll just prepare something to give to others, but I want to make it personal. I don't always do that, but that helps me. Now, for others, they may not have that opportunity. But for those that are listening or watching, if they teach a class or if they're interested in teaching a class, that's a good reason to teach. I mean, I think Philip Yancey said one time, he said he went out and wrote, they said, why do you write all these books? And he's like, well, anytime I don't know about something, I just decide to write a book about it. Yep. And then I go figure it out and then write the book. And if you put yourself in a position to teach others, then it forces you to learn. And so that's one thing. But I think the other is just like I'm going through, I think we'll link to this, but I'm going through and I'm not waiting until January 1 to start it. I went ahead and started at the end of the year. But I'm beginning the day with a little devotional book by Paul David Tripp called New Morning Mercies. New Morning Mercies. And it's just a page, but there's some depth to it. And it just helps me to kind of begin the day focused on God and His grace and His goodness. And so I'm trying to do that to do it to get away and to break from the noise. And so like leaving the phone in the closet instead of it being my alarm clock. Okay, getting just an old-fashioned, like alarm clock.
And you have that?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we have that.
That's impressive.
And even, this is my wife's doing, but anyway, but we have this old school alarm. It don't even light up. It's just old school like alarm clock. But again, the phone is if it's right there at the nightstand, you know what you do? You wake up to turn your alarm off, and so you start checking stuff on your phone.
You see all the notifications.
Yeah. And so
that are pointless.
Yeah, I mean,
really.
Can it wait 10 minutes before I hear from God and talk to God? Absolutely. It can wait 10 minutes. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
That's good. That's good. So even just setting your phone aside. How about this? We have a lot of and let me say, too, we'll link to that book that you mentioned by Paul David Tripp in the notes as well. So I think it'd be cool if you're looking for a devotional book, you can follow along with Pastor Matt in that book as well.
Maybe plug the reading plan, too, that we just set up.
Yeah, I'll plug the reading plan at the end as well that Pastor Matt and I are going through as well, and want to invite you to do that. We have a lot of viewers that are parents and grandparents, and our church is multi-generational, and so we love that about our church. But you have kids, and so maybe tell us, are there ways that you're teaching your kids right now specifically to get along with God? What are you doing maybe even with your wife to make sure you guys invest in your kids that way?
I mean, the main thing we do right now, we've got a Bible story book, and we've gone through different ones over the years. But we've got one right now that we're reading through the whole Scripture with the kids every night. And so we read through that with them, and we take time to pray with them every night before they go to bed.
And that's like 10 minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's not, 10 minutes is about the time that we take with that.
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent way to do that. If you don't have any kind of quiet time with your family, I know like my parents would call it like family altar time. And I remember 10 minutes a night. I still have these pictures in my head of my parents doing that with us. So I think just 10 minutes a day with your kids, getting a storybook Bible, getting something. We can link some resources to you, but I think that'd be a great way to start with your kids and grandkids as well. Well, as we wrap up, I did want to mention, too, about the daily reading plan that we're going to start. It starts tomorrow, so we're recording this on December 29th. It starts December 30th. And we're going to share the link there so you can join that Bible reading plan through the Bible app. An excellent way to do that. If you don't have any kind of, reading plan, or if you're just starting from scratch, this is a great way to do it. There's just a couple verses to read. There's a devotional to read, and then you can even recap it with each other. So everybody in the group can recap it, talk about what they've learned together. And so we're going to link that in there, and then we'll share it as well through email so you can jump on that and make sure that you get in on that. Hey, as we close, do you got anything else you want to say?
I'm never at a loss for something to say. So
sure.
No, let me close with this last thought. I for some may be watching or listening, and they still haven't bought into this. I mean, they may have been here Sunday, they may have heard the message, maybe listened to this. They still haven't bought into the importance of regularly and consistently, spending time alone with God. Okay, I just want to say, Jesus. Jesus did that. Jesus set that example for us. You can read that. I just came across a blog post today where somebody pointed out 6 times that Jesus chose solitude over people. When he was getting ready to prepare for his ministry, 40 days out in the wilderness before he started his earthly ministry, to recharge after hard work, he withdrew in solitude to pray, to work through grief when he heard about his cousin, John the Baptist, being killed. He withdrew to grieve. Before making big decisions like choosing the 12 to be the apostles, he withdrew and he prayed and he spent time in silence and solitude. During times of distress, he did the same thing before he went to the cross, just to focus on prayer. There's actually, is the 6th one, but there's actually a verse in Scripture in Mark chapter 7 that tells us that Jesus arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon. This is Mark 7:24. He arose and he went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house, and he did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. He literally went into a house, and he didn't want people to get to him and to find him. And I just think if Jesus did this, if he had to withdraw and find times of silence and solitude to reconnect with his heavenly Father, then certainly we need to do that too.
Yeah.
And for us, it may not be the crowds coming to be healed. For us, it may be the TV that's trying to speak into our life. It may be the phone. It may be, shutting these things down daily, regularly, consistently. Be with God. We're going to talk more about this concept as we move forward. But I thought it was interesting, in the beginning of the Gospels, Jesus, he appointed the 12 to be with him. And then in Acts chapter 1, he appointed them to go out and be witnesses. And so witness preceded witness. Witness preceded witness.
Yeah.
And I wonder if many of the times if we're not being better witnesses of Jesus, it's because we're not being better witnesses. We're not being with him.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Right
It's on the table. But we're not being with him enough. I just, spend time with him.
Yeah.
Apart from me, Jesus said, apart from me, you can do nothing. So abide in him and let his words abide in you. I cannot overemphasize the importance of this.
Yeah. And what if our church just decided, and as we close, what if we just all decided right now, 10 minutes a day? I mean, literally, that's easy. 10 minutes a day. And we've given you a ton of resources. So why don't you decide right now to say, if you're not, or even if you are, maybe it just needs to be more, you need more quality there. Hey, just 10 minutes a day. I think that's good. We can follow Christ's example. Well, Pastor Matt, thanks for sharing that with us. We're glad that you have come on today, and we appreciate the sermon. If you didn't listen to it, please go back and listen to that. Next week, we'll have Sean Trollinger on, I hope I said that right, on the podcast. We're going to interview him, learn more about him. So make sure if you got a student in the student ministry, he or she's going to want to listen to this, and then you as a parent are also as well. So especially those with students, you're not going to want to miss it. Put January 24th on your calendar at 6 p.m. for Vision Sunday. You're not going to want to miss that. And then be in prayer for our Upward ministry. We really believe God's going to use this in a powerful way. As always, our podcast is sponsored by Lebanon Baptist Church in Greensboro, North Carolina. We appreciate our listeners, and we are so thankful that you've decided to join us today. And we pray that you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for joining us for Around the Table, a discussion all about the ministry and preaching of Lebanon Baptist Church.
If you would like to learn more about Lebanon Baptist Church, visit lbcnow.org. Make sure to follow Lebanon Baptist Church on Facebook and Instagram, as well as subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Play,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thank you for listening.